Hey everyone, Mike here in the BFH Garage. We have Sean's 2006 LJ up on the lift. It is getting a Savvy mid-arm installed. It's gonna be a long project. It's gonna take a lot of work, a lot of things you gotta think through. Not for the faint of heart, that's for sure, because you're cutting a whole lot of stuff off. But stay tuned, let's see where this goes. We have all the components laid out onto the table here. He's over there trying to get the exhaust out, but you can see you got your Savvy aluminum arms. These things are giant. You have all the brackets you're gonna have to weld on to your frame. You have your truss in the back. You have your truss up front, and all that's going under here. One of the first things we have to do is get the exhaust out. And I think he needs my help, so I gotta go. You gotta pull your exhaust out and rework your entire exhaust with this kit. Sometimes that means cutting stuff out.
Where do we start at next?
So part of the problem with the truss here then is the ARB fitting is going to be in the way. So we're gonna have to relocate ARB fitting to down here so we can make that work with this truss.
Do we pull that?
All right, so we just decided we're gonna pull off the entire axle. It's gonna make things easier because I'm gonna have to get in, rework the inside for the ARB. Plus it's gonna make it easier when we're trying to work these brackets, get everything cut off, have access to everything else. So out comes the axle. Axle removed. Cut off brackets both sides. That's up next while I fix the ARB. They're gonna be cutting those off.
16ths.
You live in a metric world, don't you? Brand new gear oil, so we're trying to recapture that so we can reuse it. The nice thing about having the axle out of the Jeep is I can tilt the pinion down and just pour this gear oil right back in. So if you have to reuse gear oil and your axle's under the Jeep, it makes it a little bit tougher because then you have to put it into some sort of transfer container to do that. When in doubt, get a BFH. All right, so once you get your brackets tacked in place, go through, you're gonna start burning into the frame. Some of these positions are tough to get to when you're welding, so you're just gonna have to work through it, but you're gonna burn in. Once you get your brackets all welded on, get them primed and painted. Oops. Here we are, we finally finished the Savvy mid-arm control arm upgrade. I want to kind of walk you through some things. This is not an install video, first of all. You got to understand there's so much work that needs to be done in this. There's not a whole lot of time to video. It would require a full-time dedicated cameraman for this. So I'm gonna walk around, starting with the rear, kind of show you what's going on here. When you look at the control arm mounts and everything else themselves, they look relatively straightforward to put on, and they are, but it's all the small work that has to go along with this in order to make all this stuff work together. Triangulated on the rear there on the uppers, and then look at the exhaust work you have to do there. So the exhaust work we did ourselves versus taking it to an exhaust shop, and that takes a lot of patience, a lot of creative thinking in order to get this thing to work and come out the back end without hitting anything. So brake lines, for example, let's go around the backside, take a look at those brake lines. You got to completely rework brake lines all the way around. And I'm telling you, it is a ton of small work that needs to be done for this upgrade, but it completely makes it worth it. Relocating your ARB bulkhead fitting, if you have an ARB locker, you can see how the cover here for the truss is part of the rear cover as well. So things just don't come apart as easy as they used to, but there's a reason for it. So you look there, you can see how the bulkhead fitting, we went with the newest version of the ARB style that has the banjo bolt fitting there. We get that to come up and around. Ton of work. So moving on to the front now. Again, the front takes a lot of work too. Here you can probably see a little bit better with better light, but getting these brackets not only welded on, but you got to take the other ones off. And that is so much grinding and so much cutting as you've seen in the video. Just a ton of small work, but when you look at this, you're like, okay, no problem, I can do that nice and easy. I'm telling you, this is a multi-day project. If this is your daily driver, unless you're an experienced person in understanding how things go, I would not attempt to tackle this in a weekend and call it good. This is something that you're gonna have to work through as a process. So looking at the front truss now, for example, you can see how we had to extend the breather hose because that takes the breather hose and has to move it behind the truss, which makes it more difficult. The ARB fitting. So I'm doing a re-gear on this particular, JK?
LJ.
Oh, LJ. I'm doing a re-gear on this thing coming up here in a couple of weeks. So for now, we just capped the bulkhead fitting. We did move it already. If you look down in there, somebody else installed the gears for whatever reason. They put the bulkhead fitting over there. So we moved it over to this side, moved it to where we wanted, and that is gonna work. So this is all fun. This is taking a ton of time to make sure everything lines up, cycling the suspension, making sure there's no interference issues, and it's just a big pain in the butt. So if you're gonna tackle something like this, a lot of fun, you're gonna get a lot of benefit, but it is a lot of work. So a lot of people ask, why am I going to go to a mid-arm lift? Why would I want to spend that kind of money? As you can tell, this guy with his LJ, he's got this thing set up pretty sweet. He's got the outboarded shocks in the rear. He's doing everything he can to get the most out of this LJ. So when you're talking in terms of benefits, the Savvy mid-arm versus a short arm, the axle hop when you're making a steep climb up rocks. And so the purpose for the Savvy mid-arm over a long arm is to prevent the sinking rear end and the light front end while also climbing a steep incline. So a lot of benefit there. It's a really impressive setup. Takes a ton of work to get it done though. So here we're looking at the rear. We have a 4-link upper triangulated, and what this does, it allows for great travel, but eliminates bind on anything. You'll notice that there's no track bar there, so the upper triangulation eliminates the need for a track bar. Okay, here we're looking at the front end, which is a 3-link with the track bar, and what this does, this eliminates the inherent bind with the factory, with the original factory 5-link. So this eliminates a lot of problems as well, especially when you're running high speed. It's going to maintain caster with the parallel arms as you're going high speed, for example, through the desert. Okay, so one of the benefits of this 3-link front end is that it is going to preserve your caster, and the way they do that is you have parallel front arms. So you can see the way those arms, they line right up with each other. And that's gonna give you predictable steering as you're going through high-speed off-road travel. So now that this project is done, I wanted to take a second to clarify some things and articulate a little bit better than when we're in the heat of the moment of trying to get this stuff done. The purpose for going to this mid-arm upgrade, or you could do the mid-arm suspension kit, which comes with the springs. Either way, the point of it is to upgrade the control arms to a mid-arm. What that's going to do is going to get your geometry back similar to the stock geometry. Anytime you have short arms and you go with a larger lift, then that's going to cause your geometry to get out of whack. Now, one of the problems with that is when you are rock crawling and you're going up a pretty steep incline, you're going to get some hop on the backside from those short arms. So the purpose of the mid-arm is to eliminate that hop. And then on the front side, what it does is it keeps you from getting a light front end. So imagine, if you will, you're on a steep incline and you're trying to crawl up. With a traditional short arm, you're going to want to tend to flop over backwards, where that mid-arm is going to keep you planted to the rocks as you make that, that climb. So another thing I want to address is there's been a couple people out there that have mentioned that they heard somewhere, it's completely unsubstantiated, that the front end feels like it wanders around when you're driving, and that's not the case. The best example to help describe this is when you go from a stock TJ sway bar to a Curry anti-rock, and all of a sudden you get a little more body roll because you went to a different sway bar. Well, the same thing with the mid-arm. When you look at the stock suspension, it's a factory 5-link, and what this Savvy mid-arm does is it eliminates the inherent bind that's associated with that 5-link. So by going to a 3-link in the front and a triangulated upper rear in the back without the track bar, you're gonna get a little bit more body roll because your control arm joints aren't in a bind as they would be if you had a stock suspension. So those can be corrected by getting your sway bars properly tuned. But the biggest thing you could probably do for that is to tune your shocks. Now, lastly, I don't want to discourage anybody from buying this control arm upgrade thinking it's going to be too much work, because, you know, in the end, you're going to get out of it what you put into it. And if you put in some good hard work, you're going to really enjoy the suspension when you're off-road. Here in my shop, I have the luxury of having a lift. Had a couple of the guys helping out, so we had multiple people doing things, and that definitely makes it easier. But this is in no way not doable by a single person in their own garage at home. In fact, one of the guys that had theirs done here did this on his own, and it was his daily driver. So he was pressed for time to get things done. He stayed focused, and he got it done in 2 long weekends. So one person can do this. If you have somebody else to help you out with grinding things, it's definitely going to make it go a little bit faster. Ours kind of took a little bit longer than it probably should, because, you know, when you get a bunch of guys together, you're going to sit around and talk and start talking theory and things instead of work, and so that kind of gets in the way a little bit as well. But hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you guys have any questions, throw them down there in the comments section. Please subscribe to this channel. If you guys like this content, I'll keep putting more up, but I definitely like to see that feedback to make sure I'm on the right track for what everybody's looking for. Got a bunch of other projects coming up in the future. On my personal TJ, I'm gonna be, let's see, I have a hydro assist I have to install. I have new Curry springs. I have some outboard shocks on order, so I have all the brackets for that. So a ton of stuff coming up. If you guys have ideas for projects, drop them in the comment section.